Hi, listeners. This is Sarah with a message from the cruising team. As you might already know, we're an independent podcast. So if you want to support the work we're doing, you can donate to us at buymeacoffee.com/cruisingpod. Additionally, if you're looking to hire an audio engineer, an editor, or producer, you can reach out to us directly at cruisingpod@gmail.com. And as always, please follow, subscribe, and leave us a glowing review on your podcast app if you haven't already. It really helps with exposure. Thank you so much for listening. Here's the episode. Have you heard of Olivia, the travel company for lesbians and LGBTQ plus women? You know what they say. Wherever you go, there you are. And when you're a lesbian or LGBTQ plus woman, you want to go on vacation, let your hair down, and be your unique self. Olivia Travel creates full takeovers of their cruise, resort, riverboat, and adventure vacations. So you'll spend the week with LGBTQ plus women who come from all different backgrounds yet have so much in common. It's life-changing to be in the majority on your vacation. You don't know until you go. Discover Olivia for yourself at olivia.com or through the link in our show notes. Save $100 on your next Olivia booking with promo code CRUISING.
So would they only arrest you if you were in men's clothes, or would they arrest
Well, I
you?
always wear like this. I never change my attire. They told me a lot of times, I want to see you in that dress. I said, sit down and wait, because you're going to get tired. Stand there.
This is a 2004 interview between lesbian historian Lillian Faderman and a woman named Nancy Valverde. Nancy is a well-known Chicana lesbian activist from Los Angeles. She's often referred to as a pioneer, and that title makes the most sense to me. Her activism is very much rooted in her own stubbornness, basically an unwillingness to conform to the heteronormative world, even back in the 40s and 50s.
I used to go to the straight bars. They used to drag me out and put me in jail, but I go anyway. They never dragged me out of a gay bar.
Really?
Never. It was always from the straight bars that they would drag me out, you know.
Nancy is most known for her long-fought battle with the LAPD over masquerading laws. Throughout the 1950s, she spent dozens and dozens of nights in jail over her refusal to wear what was traditionally deemed women's clothes. We started trying to reach Nancy leading up to our trip to LA last fall. She was 91 at the time and living in an affordable LGBT senior housing building called Triangle Square Apartments. I'd connected with an old friend of Nancy's who said she'd be open to an interview and advised me on how to reach her. She told me to call, wait for the answering machine, introduce myself, and then stay on the line until Nancy picks up.
Hello. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hi, Nancy. My name is Sarah Gabrielli. I'm calling from Cruising Podcast, which Nancy was moving pretty slowly at the time and with a lot of effort. This process of calling meant A, Nancy had plenty of time to get to the phone, and B, she didn't have to bother getting up if it was someone she didn't want to talk to. Yeah, I guess I'm just gonna wait and hopefully we're able to chat soon. I guess B applied to me because still I got no answer. Once in LA, we kept trying to coordinate with Nancy through her friend, but it seemed she might not be up for an interview after all. On our last day in LA, Rachel and I decided to drop off a card and flowers at Nancy's apartment, mostly to apologize for all of the messages on her machine. The security person at the front didn't do deliveries, he said, but was very happy and willing to buzz us up to complete the delivery ourselves. And that's how Rachel and I met Nancy Valverde. I wasn't recording when Nancy first opened her door, but she knew immediately we were the girls that had been calling her and ushered us inside to do an interview right then and there, which was especially generous considering she'd been having a bad day.
What a bitch. It's been a bitchy day, huh?
It has been?
That's what happens. As soon as my helper leaves, I get all the commotion.
Yeah.
Well, he's here. I can even go lay down, take a rest, or he answers the phone.
Nancy has an aide that comes by for a few hours each day. The rest of the time, Nancy was left to navigate her one-bedroom apartment on her own. She breathes with an oxygen tank, which she set up across from us in her recliner. As we settled in, Nancy told us about her diagnosis.
I got cancer of the lungs.
I'm sorry to hear it.
And now I'm on hospice because, well, they can't find the cancer anymore, but my lungs are shot. So
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. That is so terrible.
Yeah, that's from smoking.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, in many ways, Nancy was brimming with life. At one point, her friend called. Nancy answered and went on to describe me and Rachel to her with a wink and a smile at both of us.
So I'll call you as soon as this is over with. They're very nice and nice looking and young. You get jealous, mija? Mija, they could be your grandkids. They are adorable. Okay, mija, we're going to continue this.
But there was no avoiding the fact that Nancy was in rough physical shape when we met her, which is definitely why we hadn't been able to reach her on the phone. But for some reason, when she found us at her door, Nancy was determined to do an interview anyway. At one point, off mic, she talked a bit about how she always wanted to help the queer community in any way she could, something she'd also mentioned in her 2004 interview with Lillian, back when Nancy was in her 70s.
You know, because when I came out and I was out there was no one to help me. Now, anything the community asks me for, I'm there for them. If it's a female, if it's for lesbians, anything they ask me, I'm there. And that's why I'm doing this.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Because the story should get out there.
I'll always wonder if Nancy knew this might be the last time she told her story, if that's why she let me and Rachel in that day. About 6 months later, on March 25th, 2024, Nancy Valverde passed away in her home after a long-fought battle with cancer. This episode is for her. This is Cruising, a podcast about the last lesbian bars in the U.S. My name is Sarah Gabrielli, and this season we're taking you to lesbian bars, past and present. This is Redz and Nancy Valverde.
When you went to your first lesbian bar, can you tell me?
Well, it was Redz, really, but it was not all lesbian. It was mixed.
Redz is a Latinx neighborhood bar located in Los Angeles' Boyle Heights. For many years, Redz was known as the local Chicana lesbian bar. Nancy has talked a lot about spending time there, which is how we originally came across her name.
We liked it at Redz because you could buy a beer and just have it there all night. And you could talk and socialize and everything. They didn't push the drinks on you, in other words.
Redz was by no means gay or lesbian linked when it first opened.
It was a neighborhood bar.
Yeah.
And the little old man owned it, Charlie. And so he made the mistake of hiring a lesbian bartender or waitress, whatever you want to call it. Well, then we were at the door, and then the straight guys want to come in. We said, "We know it's a girl staying here now," you know. And we just took over.
Yeah.
Just took over.
And Charlie didn't have a problem with it.
Never had a problem.
Sweet guy.
Well, he was really nice old
Yeah.
man. Oh, he was one of the best men that I've met. He was very nice to us, you know.
Yeah, what was he like?
Oh, he was a nice old man. He just liked people, you know. And we were younger then, so he liked to be around young people. And I told him one time, I was just kidding him. I said, "Charlie, we come here almost every night. A lot of people come in here and look at those stools. You should at least upholster those stools." You know, he had them upholstered. I said, "I better keep my mouth shut." I didn't mean to, you know, big mouth, you know.
Redz has cycled through a few different name changes over the years. It's been Redz with a Z, Redz with an S, Redheads, and as it stands today, Redz Angels.
We never expected to be a historical place, but it lasted for a long time, a very long time. All the other bars closed. Redz was still there.
20 years ago, when Lillian Faderman interviewed Nancy, she was still popping into Redz every once in a while.
So at Redz today, who goes there? They're all Latina.
Well, I go there the other day that I went, and Molly was there, and she's from my era.
Uh-huh.
There were several women there from the era, you know. They're still hanging around there. You can't drag them away from it.
And most of the lesbians who go in there are still Latina.
Yeah, they're Latina.
Today, Redz Angels is still up and running. It's a narrow dive bar with red walls both inside and out. The walls are colorful and cluttered in a typical divey fashion. A grid of records forms ceiling tiles, and there are just enough rainbow flags to make me think they still have a significant queer clientele. Nancy grew up a few miles north of Redz in a Mexican-American community in Lincoln Heights.
So I was raised there on Clover Street. You know where the San Antonio Winery is? On Lamar? I was raised there on the next street.
Nancy was born in 1932. She actually spent the first few years of her life in New Mexico.
Deming, New Mexico. It's a one-horse town, and the horse is dead.
During World War II, Nancy's dad was drafted into a defense job in Los Angeles. So in 1942, when she was 9, the family left New Mexico and settled in Lincoln Heights.
That whole neighborhood was Latin, Mexican-American, Chicano people. And that was Mozart, Antonia, Clover, Lamar, and Gibbons, 5 streets. It was so busy, they had 3 markets. Lanzas, the biggest one was a market, a AAA, and then Toma y Daca, that was a Latin. But that's where I was raised, right there. Mexican-American neighborhoods in those days, they call them barrios. It's Mexican ghettos. And very united, very united.
But when Nancy first moved onto Clover Street, she had to prove herself.
I was 9 years old, and they were always picking on me. You know, the kids, because new kid on the block, and I hit back. So pretty soon they said, we better let her join the group because she hits back. I didn't always win the fights, but I wouldn't let them just hit me. My daddy was box with me. I used to box with my daddy. And,
So then when the other kids came at you.
oh, I'd fight back. Boom, boom, boom.
Nancy has always had a hot temper. She once failed her driver's test because the instructor told her to take a left, and she said, "I'll turn where I want."
So he told me I have to come back in 2 weeks and take it again.
She tells this story of, as a teenager, picking a fight with an insurance guy who'd broken one of her windows and refused to pay her out.
I hit the guy. See, I looked down from he came at me. He wanted to take the receipt away. And so I bent down. I thought it was a rock. I thought it's got to get something to defend myself with. Well, it happened to be a bone. I hit him with it.
But as Nancy was saying, she lived in a very tight-knit community. Everyone had her back.
Well, the neighbors heard. And the first one that came out was Señor Palmas. And he said, "Oh, you want me to help you, mija? I'll help you." He jumped over the rail. And then the other guy came out over here, Angie's husband. And boy, that guy just took off like a bat out of hell, you know. I said, well, he's going to pay this bill before he can step on this street again. Because I belong to the gang there on Clover Street, you know. If I'm not there, my friends are there.
As established as Nancy was in the neighborhood, there was always something different about her.
I found myself a very strange kid because little girls would look at little boys and say, "Oh, how cute." And I look at it and say, cute. I would admire little girls. And so began to notice all that.
From a very young age, Nancy refused to wear traditional girls' clothes.
In my hometown, New Mexico, at that time when I was little, the winters were very harsh. And most little girls, they put us stockings way up to here, and then pants, you know, regular little pants for girls, because it was so cold. Every winter it snowed. It was very harsh. And so I was used to that kind of attire. So when they wanted to put a dress on me or something like that, I didn't like it. I never did like female attire on me. And then when I came here, I went to school one day with pants on, and they sent me home. So I was 9 years old by then. So then I found out I couldn't wear pants to school. And I began to think, well, I don't like female attire, but I have to wear it now. But I didn't wear dresses. My mother bought me some little skirts, they felt like pants up here at least, And then, well, when I started working, picking cotton and that out in the fields, you don't wear a dress to bend over and all that. So I started just wearing pants all the time.
Nancy was one of 5 kids in an incredibly poor family. So in 6th grade, at 11 years old, she dropped out of school and started looking for a job.
Oh, I started working very young, when I was very young, because I had to. I didn't get enough to eat at home. And so I had to go and scrounge around. So I was always looking for a job. And they were always telling me, you need a number. I said, what number do I need? I couldn't understand what number I need to go to work. I don't need, got my hands so I can work. This is just a kid. What did I know? It was a social security number. So when I hit on this guy, Conrad, he didn't ask for nothing. So I just went to work.
Conrad Moreno owned a Mexican bakery where Nancy helped out in all different ways. But mainly, she delivered the bread.
He only gave me $10 a week, but he gave my mother the rest. I don't know how much, you know what I mean. But $10 a week was not enough for my action. And I was delivering up here. You know where the Chavez Ravine is? That used to be 3 neighborhoods up there, Chicano neighborhoods too. Valverde, Bishop, and Loma.
Which the city flattened to build Dodger Stadium in 1962.
They forced them out to build that. Would you believe? I don't put one foot in that stadium.
But that was all part of Nancy's old route. For deliveries, she bought her first car at 14 years old, a 32 Oldsmobile.
That's how I became famous, because I knew so many people.
By famous, Nancy means extremely well-known and respected in the local Mexican-American community.
I'm very loyal to my friends in any situation. And I would walk out of there and then somebody would ask me, you were in there. No? I don't know. I didn't see anything. Never knew nothing, never saw anything. That's how I became famous, because just a shut your mouth kid.
Once Nancy wrapped up her deliveries for the day, she would do just about anything to supplement that $10 a week from Conrad.
It only took half a day to deliver the bread. Mexican pastry is what it was. And then I would go over to the apartments. There was a bunch of drug addicts and no goods. They would go and steal stuff and sell it. And so when they were selling something, if they said they wanted $15 for it, I would stay there and wait until they got sick. They needed the fix, they needed the morphine. That's what they use, heroin. That's what they used to stick their arm. And so once they got sick enough, I'd give them $5 for the stuff. Brought it down $10.
Once her friends got too high to tell the difference, Nancy would buy these stolen goods off them for cheap to resell for a nice profit.
In other words, I turned into a fence. I didn't know it was against the law to fence stuff, stolen stuff. But I was just a kid in the neighborhood. So I used to look for these kids that used to do that and see what they had for sale and then buy it from them and resell it for more money. Very enterprising.
Now that Nancy had a car, it was a lot easier for her to make money on the side. Before long, she started shuttling neighborhood sex workers to their tricks and back. She'd make a few bucks, get her tank filled, and get to hang around some beautiful older women. This is how Nancy met her first lesbian, she told Lillian Faderman.
I met this lady. Her name I don't want mentioned. She asked me for rides also. But one day she told me, take me to pick up my girl. And I thought, her daughter, I thought. Well, when we got over there, it was her girlfriend. And I thought, gosh, she's just like me. She likes women, you know.
This meant the world to Nancy, who, up until this point, had been quietly wondering what was so wrong with her.
In my day, I didn't know any lesbians. I thought I was alone in the world with this condition.
At 15, Nancy met a girl her own age.
I met a girl, 15, that had already been broken in.
By this, Nancy means she already had experience with women.
She broke me in, and that's where I started not caring what they said about me.
Not that Nancy had ever really let anyone else tell her what to do, but now she was clearer on her identity, and she could afford to buy herself tailored men's clothes.
I dressed to please myself. And you know what that meant? I was working. I was hustling on the side by selling stuff. And so I buy my own clothing.
A lot of butch women of the day would wear suit jackets and ties, but Nancy always preferred more casual sportswear.
I go over to those little exclusive stores, men's, and I think that tailor there was gay, the man, because I'd like a shirt, and it couldn't fit me. They were all too big, and he would measure me and everything. He said, "Come tomorrow." The next day I go and it just fit me like a glove. Pants, the same thing. That was in the neighborhood.
I asked Nancy, as someone presenting so outwardly gay, if she ever officially came out to her family.
Who, to my mother? Yeah. I never came out to no one.
They
just knew. No, my mother knew. She told me, "Why don't you get a gun and shoot yourself?" I just looked at her. I tell you, I toughened up.
When was it that she would have said something like that?
I guess when she found out that I was gay. When I wouldn't take off the men's attire, male attire. When I began to buy my own attire, and then women would come to the door, girls, friends of mine. And she would say, "Te hablan las putas." You know what putas are? In Spanish, they're whores. They were decent young ladies, but she was so angry at me. And I didn't come out and tell anybody anything.
The Chicana lesbian community was hard to find, but they were there.
I imagine it was really underground, sort of.
Oh, yeah.
Bars. Yeah.
Very hidden. In the bars or word of mouth. That's where you meet. That's where you socialize.
Places like Redz, which Nancy would discover in her early 20s.
I always frequent the bars because I know that's where the connections are. To get a job, to this, to that, you know. And they called us alcoholics. We were not in the bars drinking half of the time. We were socializing. But the cops didn't know that. The men make a spectacle of themselves. We didn't.
Nancy was 17 the first time she went to jail for her identity.
I had this other friend up in East LA, way out there in Maravilla. I told him I was looking for a job. He said, "I'm working at the brick place where they make bricks. And women usually get paid what men get paid." I said, "And I want to go someplace where I get paid for my..." Because every place I go, they pay the guys more money than the women, and the women do the work. What the hell's wrong?
One day, Nancy's friend sent for her, but when she got to the brick place, it was closed for the day.
The gate was too tall. That's the fence. And I didn't want to climb over it. And so I was yelling from the sidewalk to my friend so he could hear me into the garage.
Someone must have called the cops on her because the police showed up.
And right away, they turned me around and put my cuffs. I said, "What the hell's going on?" They took me in. And there was a substation in East LA. And when they took me there, that's another story. The cop came up to the bars and he tried to reach for the parts, you know. And I jumped back. And then I noticed it had drapes. And I thought, shit, they can do anything they want to me here, you know. So I sat on the wooden bench and I started hitting it like this, making a bunch of noise. What I didn't know is that there was cells where there was men on the other side. And so I heard them yelling, "Shut up, stop, knock it off, what's that?" And then when I heard it was guys back there, I said, "This is Nancy from East Side Clover." And then one of them said, "Hey, Nancy." He said, it was Julian from Kern, from over there. "What's the matter, Nancy? What's up?" And then I told him, I yelled out. this fucking cop here, he tried to touch me and on this. So they started making racket. And then I told them I want a female officer. I want a female officer. And finally, they did get a female officer. She walked up to the bars and she told me, come here. Well, I didn't get too close, so I didn't trust them anymore. But she said, you see that desk over there? She said, if you feel insecure at any time, you call me. I'll be sitting there. I already sent for a car for you to take you downtown to the jail downtown. To the jail, another jail. I want to go home, you know. He said, no, because you're masquerading. I said, what the hell is masquerading? I figured I'll go along with the games, whatever it is. And that's when I found out. They threw me in jail, in the county jail there. And that's where I started to get into jail often. When I was going to school, barber school, they would arrest me almost every Friday when I was going home.
At 24 years old, Nancy enrolled in barber school. Only problem was, now the cops knew exactly where to find her every Friday after school.
And then by Monday morning, if the judge came in early, I would go part-time to school. If not, if he came at 1, I lost the whole day. So Mrs. Lewis, the owner of the school, she called me in the office. And she thought I was partying on the weekend. That's what she thought. I started talking to her and I thought, well, there goes my schooling, because I had lied on the application that I had never been to jail. And so she's the owner of the school. I lied on the application. That's it. And so I told her the whole story, and I told her, you know, I talked to her a long time. And then she said, all right, go back. So I went back to my place over there to study my book. And a couple of days went by. She didn't call me. I said, what's happening? And then I saw some patrolmen trail in and go all the way to the back into her office. I said, oh, shit, now they're going to pick me up. Maybe I should leave here now, you know. I thought, no, I better stick around and see. Good thing I stayed, because they left. And she called me, and Mrs. Lewis called me in. She said, Nancy, I spoke to every officer within a 3-mile radius. And I told them, you don't bother my students going or coming to school. So I finished my school.
Mrs. Lewis had scared the cops into leaving Nancy alone long enough for her to finish school, but they never really stopped harassing her.
I was working by the window, and I was shaving somebody around here. But I always had a real steady nerves, you know. I told you where I've been. You had to have steady nerves for all that. You can't show fear, ever. I was doing that, and the cop would go hit the window. That's terrible to be that type of person, you know? What if I had got the guy's ear or something?
It almost seems like harassing Nancy was personal for the cops, like her refusal to change into a dress was a direct threat to their authority.
Well, because of my attire. Because nobody was supposed to be dressed like that. No female.
While this notion was extremely common across the country in the 40s, 50s, and beyond, the mayor of Los Angeles, Fletcher Bowron, felt particularly strongly. In 1942, he passed a regulation prohibiting women employees from wearing pants at City Hall. That same year, he said to have announced to the city council he much preferred to see feminine traits in men than masculine ones in women. As backwards as this all is, it's hard to imagine being as brave as Nancy in the face of another night in jail.
Yeah.
And so did you ever think about, oh, maybe I shouldn't dress like this because it's making my life so difficult?
No, I was determined to be myself regardless. I don't care what anybody says. I support myself. Nobody supports me. I buy these clothes. Why would anybody come and tell somebody else how to dress?
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know, I don't hide it that I'm a female. I tell them, I'm a female. My name is Nancy Valverde. There's no guy named Nancy. Shit come, shit go. I'm going to be myself.
Have you heard of Olivia, the travel company for lesbians and LGBTQ+ women? You know what they say. Those who wish to sing always find a song. And when you're a lesbian or LGBTQ plus woman, you want to be able to go on vacation, have some laughs, and be your unique self. Olivia Travel creates full takeovers of their cruise, resort, riverboat, and adventure vacations. And they program every trip with comedians and musicians from our community. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll have the time of your life. Discover Olivia for yourself at olivia.com or through the link in our show notes and save $100 on your next Olivia booking when you use promo code CRUISING.
When I was going to school, barber school, it was right there by the donuts, Cooper Donuts. And we used to go to the Coopers and have coffee and donuts.
Cooper Donuts was a family-owned 24-hour donut chain open from the 1940s through the 1990s. During that time, Cooper's was widely known for its inclusivity and protection of the local LGBTQ community.
It was very unusual in the 50s for the LGBT community to be accepted in any way, shape, or form. In fact, businesses weren't really allowed to serve outwardly LGBT members of the community because they'd get their business license taken away or they'd get shut down. So it was very risky for them. So a lot of businesses, if you'd walk in and they had any inkling, they'd shoo you out because they didn't want to lose their business license. Cooper Donuts wasn't like that.
This is Jackie Evans. Her in-laws owned Cooper Donuts.
They didn't care who you were, what your race, religion, ethnicity, sexual preference, gender. They didn't care. They were like, everyone's welcome. Everyone's accepted here. So much so that they even would take people in who needed to make a buck as, day workers or, repeat workers or whatever. It wasn't just about give us your money. It was about everyone's welcome and accepted. And if you needed to make a buck to survive, you can come, sweep or serve donuts or work the register or whatever you needed just to get by. So it was very unusual for a business to not only risk their business license to allow LGBT patrons, but to go one step further and welcome them in as part of the family.
We met up with Jackie and her husband Keith while we were in town.
I'm the grandson of Jack Evans, who owned Cooper Donuts. I remember my dad telling me certain stories about, the patrons of Cooper Donuts. There are, a lot of LGBTQ, members from the LGBTQ society coming over and going to Cooper's. And he said it was, we just pretty much didn't care who you were. You want to come in and you have a donut, you can have a donut.
Jackie and Keith walked us over to the original Cooper Donuts location on Main Street in downtown LA.
This is the 213 Cooper Donuts right here. This is where Nancy Valverde would have been at, hanging out.
She used to go to Barber College, right down the street, a block away.
Jackie can't help but jump in excitedly to talk about the history of the donut shop. Perhaps even more so than Keith, she's extremely passionate and knowledgeable about her in-laws' legacy. It all hits close to home for her.
Well, here we go. Here goes nothing. So I'm bi. I used to be married to a woman. And, we really fought hard for the right to marry back in 2008. And to me, coming from that world into, we got divorced several years ago and then I met Keith and we got married. It was just such polar opposites. And that's another reason why I was saying his family's so accepting because they didn't blink an eye. They didn't flinch, nothing. Most people are like, you're married to a what? What? A woman? What? So, you know what I mean? His family was like, oh, okay, cool. How did that end? And I was like, oh, we got divorced. So oh, okay, well, welcome to the family now, So they're just very open and accepting and, kind of having that history. And then I didn't know anything about this when I met him, right? When we got approached by the city to ask questions and stuff, we really started digging in and learning more about it and stuff.
What Jackie found blew her mind. Not only did her family have this progressive legacy, but at the center of that legacy was a mystery. Was Cooper Donuts actually the site of the queer community's first ever uprising against police harassment?
If it's true, it would have predated Stonewall by 10 years. So that's pretty remarkable and amazing.
The riots at the Stonewall Inn in June of 1969 are regarded as the first gay uprising in the United States and a major turning point in the gay rights movement. The most popular account of the 1959 Cooper Donuts riot comes from a queer writer named John Recchi. He wrote about it in his 1963 book, City of Night.
He was in Cooper Donuts, and I guess the police would sometimes check, licenses to see if anyone was masquerading. So I believe that night, and I think it was 1959.
It says it was in May of 1959.
May of
although
1959.
The date changes from time to time.
Mm-hmm. So
Sometimes it's 1988 and 1958, sometimes it's 1959.
the main thing was that police went in to check IDs, and some people didn't match their IDs.
They were checking to make sure that, if you were dressed as a woman, then the gender on your ID was female. And if you're dressed as a man, the gender on your ID was male. So if they weren't, then you'd get arrested.
So I guess these people that were, getting arrested, they put them in the back of a squad car, one of them being John Recchi.
Apparently they tried to cram like 5 people.
Yeah, there was there was, I guess, too many people in the squad car, and the people that were getting arrested were very aggravated, somehow got out of the squad car, and at that time, bars were letting out, and there was people from Cooper Donuts or whatever donut shop it was, coming out too, and they saw this, and they did not like what they saw, so they began throwing donuts and coffee and other things of that nature. At one point, the LAPD had to shut down the street, and the people that were in the squad car, they were getting arrested, they took off and fled. So from that, John Recchi was saying that was the first instance of the LGBTQI plus community uprising against police harassment.
Unfortunately, over the years, John Recchi has turned out not to be the most reliable of narrators.
Well, he's not too exactly sure. First, he was thinking it was Cooper Donuts, but he may later recanted it, said it wasn't Cooper Donuts. It was, another donut store. Then there's different, perspectives on it. Some people say it was, some people say it wasn't.
We have no evidence one way or the other. His dad, his grandpa, nobody has any information
If
on
they
it.
did,
So,
my grandfather did know he took it to the grave with them.
yeah.
But
There's no information in the news, no stories, no nothing. And a lot of people think like it's such a controversial thing of the time that how could it not be in the news? But then the news also went to great lengths to not cover LGBT topics back then. So maybe they just kind of kept it on download for that reason. And the LAPD says that there was a fire in the 70s and a lot of the records from the 50s burned. So they said they have no records of it either. And I'm like, that's convenient.
It would definitely be in the LAPD's best interest to keep something like this out of the news. Who knows the chain of events that might have followed had news of the riots reached more of the queer community. Just look at the impact of the Stonewall riots 10 years later. Until recently, Jackie found it hard to believe the whole thing with so little evidence. But then she connected with Nancy.
Nancy has a piece of it, which is the only reason. Nancy is the only reason I think it actually did happen. Her two friends called her from outside of Cooper's and were like, hey, come down. We need your help. And she was working and she told her boss she wanted to leave. And he was like, if you leave, you don't have a job tomorrow. So you either stay and work or you go to that. So she doesn't remember when that was or any of that. She doesn't remember it was out right outside of Cooper Donuts. And, it's probably this one because this is where they used to hang out. I believe her friends are long gone, the two that called her. So there's nobody to talk to. So that's the only piece of evidence that I have that says that maybe it happened, but we really can't find anything on it at all.
And the pair has put a hell of a lot of time into looking. They've put out calls to action, spoken with old customers, and poured through old records and newspapers.
Nancy remembers reading an article the following morning about the uprising or the disturbance. So, we figured we checked newspapers in the vicinity of where she worked and, because we know where she would pick up her newspaper every day. She told us. So we're like, okay, great. That would have been this paper. Let's look and see if they have anything. We couldn't find anything.
Yeah,
Based on the accounts from both Nancy and John Recchi, it seems a small uprising like this did happen. It's just unclear exactly where it was.
My perspective is, Cooper Donuts was an LGBTQIA plus hangout, and the police also went there as well. So if you put those two things together, it could have been a volatile situation where you could easily see there was maybe a riot or some kind of disturbance that happened at Cooper Donuts.
Yeah.
If a donut shop is going to be the center of something like that.
Right.
Exactly.
Probably the 24-hour LGBTQIA plus inclusive.
Probably, I suppose.
But according to Nancy, inside Cooper Donuts was always a safe haven. Even though, if you remember, she'd been arrested there every Friday after school just 1 block away. We didn't get the chance to ask Nancy about that, but Jackie did.
You know, it was a block away. How were you comfortable coming to Cooper's? And she's like, they didn't bother us in Cooper's. Outside, like on the way, on the street, yes. But at Cooper's, they didn't. And I really think it has a lot to do with during the day. You know, the cops would frequent the place. At night, everyone was welcome. So I think it was just kind of like a live and let be type of thing. Like, I've often wondered, you know, did maybe the family have an arrangement or something, since the cops would visit all the time? But we don't know for a fact what that is. Maybe it was just because they hung out there too. So, you know, they didn't want to, you know, ruffle feathers where they wanted to chill too. Everyone patronized it, so nobody, you know, bothered anybody there, at least inside. From what I understand, very close by outside wasn't the same story, right? But at least everyone could come in and be at peace while they were there.
However Keith's family managed this, it meant a lot to people like Nancy.
One of the things that Nancy said to me that's really stuck with me is, you know, if she had a nickel to spend on a cup of coffee, she wasn't going to walk into a store where they were just barely tolerating her and give them their nickel. She was going to go to Cooper Donuts because there she was accepted and she was welcomed and nobody looked at her twice, right? Like, she's going to spend that nickel she earned her with her blood, sweat, and tears at the place that really she felt like she was welcome. You know what I mean? And that just resonated with me. To have that in the 50s, I think that's just, yeah, that's unheard of.
Nancy's last arrest would have been that same year, 1959. She'd finished barber school and was now in her late 20s. On the night of the last arrest, she was in an empty bar, quietly playing pool with the one other customer there.
And we're playing, and then the cops walked in. They pulled me out and they handcuffed me. I said, what the hell's wrong? Masquerading.
This was the final straw for Nancy. She'd been in and out of jail for about a decade now. She might have felt powerless at times, but as it turns out, she was far from it.
And then I decided I went to school. I'm legit, you know. And I thought once I start working a legitimate job and all that, they'll lay off. So I met a friend of mine, well, an acquaintance, street acquaintance. And I told her my problem. I said, do you know of any attorney that would help me do this? He said, Nancy, go to the law library. I think it was on Hill Street. And look and see about that law. Must be a law. They're doing it to you that frequently. So sure enough, I go over there. And I think the guy was gay that was there. And I told him, if you have anything about this and that and the other, he said, oh, yeah. So he went and got me some court things, you know, stuff, legal stuff.
Anything he could find on masquerading laws.
I remember now one of the cases there was this woman had already taken it to the state Supreme Court and it had been thrown out of court. It was a violation of our, our rights. Article 4 and 14, I still remember. They're violating those rights. Yeah. And she had already fought it. Why are they still arresting us?
The California Supreme Court had already ruled in 1950 that wearing clothing of the opposite sex was not considered a crime, meaning the masquerading laws that Nancy was arrested over had been unconstitutional this entire time.
And then I went to find a lawyer. Martha Jefferson, she's on 3rd and Broadway, on top of the $1 Million Theater. There's offices up there. So I went up there, and Martha Jefferson was in conference in Sacramento. Always a setback, you know. And so I was very disappointed. And then the girl said, well, we have somebody in her place. We have a young man over there. So I said, oh, thank you. We'll walk over there to the desk, to the room, to pick in and see. It was a young black man. They were fighting for their rights.
Need I remind you, this is mid-civil rights movement 1959.
They were arresting them left and right in Alabama and all over. And now he's going to defend a Chicana lesbian. But I had no choice. It was too close to court time. So I walked in, and I told him the story, I said, you know what, I don't think this is right. I said, then I already went to the law library, and this is da-da-da-da-da. And then he said, they say, this is a misdemeanor, but I'm going to take it. I am a criminal lawyer, but I'm going to take it because I'm from San Francisco. I said, the hell do I care where he's from, Who knew San Francisco was at the front of the bay, I didn't know. But hey, if he's going to take it, Arthur Black was his name. And he was good. And it was dismissed. That was the last time I was arrested.
What did you think and feel when you found out that?
It took all this. Is this what it's going to take every time I get arrested? I didn't think it was the last time,
Right.
So, but it was.
But then it was.
It was.
Nancy would never spend another day in jail, but she would spend the rest of her life recovering from trauma by the hands of the LAPD. In the 70s, then in her 40s, she opened Nancy's Barbershop. Inside, Nancy tried to make it the safe haven she'd always needed for the queer kids of the neighborhood.
The kids would come to my shop and tell me they were gay. They wanted to tell their mother. I want to know why you want to tell your mother. Your mother already knows. She's in denial. When you tell her, she'll have to admit it to herself. Then she's going to tell your father. How's your father going to take it? And then they'll throw you out, maybe. You don't know. You can't get a job. You have no education.
She had quite a cynical approach, but it was probably realistic and helpful for a lot of kids.
Just keep quiet, go to school, learn, let them pay for schooling and all that. And then just live your life. You have sisters and brothers. They don't go around saying, I want to tell my mother I'm straight. Nobody goes around announcing anything. But why do we have to do it? So I would talk to the kids,
This is a big part of Nancy's life we haven't yet touched upon. She was always a fierce protector of children.
I was always looking after the kids. You couldn't touch a kid in front of me because that boy would get in trouble. Kids are not supposed to be treated that way.
Over the years, Nancy helped to raise a handful of kids with various lovers. A picture of one of them, Salvador, was taped up on the wall behind her.
Like this one here. I got him when he was 3 months, 3.5 months. Yeah, he's the only one I'm in touch with. I lost track of all of them.
Nancy ran her barbershop for about 9 years before she was forced into retirement. Back in the 50s, a cop had kicked her in the back during a routine arrest. Since then, she'd had ongoing back problems, no doubt perpetuated by cutting hair all day.
Then I closed the shop. I was about 49 years old, but I worked too hard all my life. So I figured I couldn't work anymore. My legs were killing me, my back, my arms, everything. It's from doing this all day.
With Lillian, Nancy spoke a bit about the lingering psychological effects after decades of police harassment.
It's terrible. It's no wonder I have that. Not only the soldiers have that syndrome. What is it?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Traumatic stress.
Yeah, post-traumatic stress.
That's it, yeah.
Even at 91, Nancy felt wary of the police, as she had every reason to be.
I try to take precautions around them because I know what abusive they can be, how abusive.
Nancy remembered an incident with a cop just a few years back before she'd gotten sick. It was a minor traffic stop, but enough to stick with her.
I went in there to make my U-turn in the parking lot and then come out and go back the way I wanted to go. That son of a bitch followed me and stopped me and telling me that I would this and I did. I said, no, sir, I didn't do that. This is what I did. And then he just kept raising his voice. Well, you're going to listen to me. I'm going to talk. If you don't let me talk, I'm going to give you a ticket. Yeah, all right, talk. So there he stands like an asshole, yelling his full head off. And I just thinking about what I'm going to do, what I'm going, my shopping list.
Last year, the city of Los Angeles tried to make things right with Nancy.
City leaders and advocates of the LGBTQ plus community this morning unveiling new signage at the intersection of Main and 2nd downtown.
In June, the city council voted to rename an intersection in downtown LA, the Cooper Donuts Nancy Valverde Square, in honor of their work for the LGBTQ community.
Actually, we can walk by and you can take a look at it if you want.
Keith and Jackie pointed it out to us.
The square is that corner right there. It's at the corner of Main and 2nd. And the old donut store is right down the street and the building's still there.
At the June 22nd unveiling, Commander Ruby Flores even apologized on behalf of the LAPD.
Sadly, rather than working to protect this community, the LAPD of that time was not always kind to our gay, our lesbian, our transgender, our non-conforming Angelinos.
Nancy wasn't well enough to attend the June 22nd unveiling, so her sister Lupe went in her place. I'd found a statement from Nancy in the Los Angeles Daily News saying she was humbled by the whole thing. I have no idea who was putting these words in her mouth, but that is definitely not how Nancy felt when we talked to her.
What do you think of the city apologizing to you and naming the...
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
I want some money for it. I don't want an apology.
Nancy is no dummy. Her mind was so sharp here, just 6 months before her passing. She knows what she's been through. She knows what justice really looks like. And this ain't it.
I lost jobs because of them.
Have you said anything like that? Like,
No, I haven't told them anything ever.
what do you say?
I'm very disgusted with them. I just hear them. I think it's a lot of bullshit myself. Make themselves feel good.
The square and stuff like that, that's not meaningful to you.
I'm not impressed at all.
Cruising is independently reported and produced by a small but mighty team of 3. Story producer and social media manager Rachel Karp, line producer and resident road trip driver Jen McGinnity, and story producer and audio engineer me, Sarah Gabrielli. Our theme song is by Joey Freeman. This episode was sponsored by Olivia Travel. You can find us at our website, cruisingpod.com, on social media at cruisingpod, or support us at buymeacoffee.com/cruisingpod. Listen to Cruising wherever you get your podcasts.